So I wanna kind of dig into kind of being a dad, and what I see as an instructor is I'll have a lesson with a kid, and a kid will take a bad swing and snap his head around and look at dad, try to get
Oh boy.
the fear thing. What what is it like? I mean, you're coming at it as a former major league player. What's it like watching your kids fail, and how do you give them space? Um, and like, what's the support like for you in dealing with that?
Well, first of all, it is the toughest thing in the world to see your kids fail. Try hard and fail. I mean, it is tough, and you can really do nothing about it except help them, give them advice, practice with them, and you got to be careful doing it. Obviously, uh, the one thing you don't want is to create fear in the kid. You know that he's disappointing you, which is tough to do. It is probably the most difficult thing to do, and I had to learn how not to do that. How do you do that? I had one thing I told my boys to do that was important: swing hard every time. I told them your job is to crush this baseball. Bo still says my dad didn't do a whole lot except tell me to hit the baseball as far as I could every time I swung the bat. And I'm like, start there and work backwards, because at least it creates an aggressive player. We can deal with an over aggressive player. We can't deal with a scared passive player. So that was rule number one. See how far we can hit the baseball. We'll work, and then we'll figure out how to do it consistently. So I guess that would be key.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's an attitude that unfortunately I think a lot of the world doesn't take. And it's crazy because obviously you're sitting there saying that, a guy who's had played at the highest level, had success, been a major league all-star, and you've got a guy down the street saying like, "Oh, well, you need to be more conservative and get your foot down earlier, make contact." Like, no, it's let's reverse engineer it, because until you feel that extreme on one end, and then you'll never know how to get somewhere in the middle. And I think one of the things I would say about both the boys is they've understood how to back down and be good hitters at really young ages, how to have a two-strike approach, how to work on things. And obviously you as a player, you were a great hitter. You were a guy that didn't strike out an overwhelming amount for the type of production you had. So why can't we teach that to everybody? Why can't we work off of, let's get our A swing off of, or whatever we want to call it, and then figure out how to back off? You know what I mean? One thing I want to ask you, complete side note, how's your Fortnite game right now?
You know what? I've kind of gotten over the hump where I'm not getting killed within 2 minutes after I drop in.
Yeah.
I'm getting 1 to 3 kills. I've got 3 solo victories, which
Wow.
that's huge.
Yeah,
That's huge.
big time. Hey, we were at dinner and I was like, "You playing Fortnite?" And he goes, "The boys bought me a PS4." So it's a good way to stay connected during the season. I mean, half the league's playing Fortnite, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good way to stay in touch. What's your average go to bed time when you've got Fortnite on?
Oh boy, I've got to get a grip on that, because I can see 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, man.
Wow.
Just turn
Because the
into
boys, the minor leagues, and I'm telling you, when I say it's like a cult, everybody in the minor leagues is playing. I've been killed by so many guys that are baseball 26. I think they're just all playing after the game, so they're probably up until about 2. But I got to put some overtime in this spring training, so when the season starts, we don't have to talk
You
hitting.
got to put your work in.
yeah, and I mean, strategically, you'll be a guy that people want on the squad instead of, it's like anything else. We're competitive. I get it.
They're carrying me right now because I'm the stealth guy. I'm hiding in the bushes, and my strategy's good. My aim is not.
Everybody needs that guy that can be stealthy, though. You know that, right? Like,
Yeah.
everybody needs that guy.
That's funny.
That's who I would be too.
I have a question, because talking about post game stuff, it's so different now with video games and social media. What was it like during your career where that didn't exist? What did you do to unwind after games? What do you do after a tough game? What do you do after a good game? What's the post game life like when you were playing versus now?
Well, we actually did have video games, just not the same. And I would recommend video games because it totally gets you. It works your hand-eye coordination. The video games now, they get your brain going. They relax you. You have fun. You get your mind off the baseball.
Right.
You got to get your mind off the game after the game,
100%.
because the next day you start to zero in that focus from the minute you get up. You know, everything you do the next day, you get up, you work out at a certain time, you eat at a certain time, you boop, 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 boop. By game time, by 7:05, you want that focus here. So you got to deload the mind, I guess is what I'd say. You know, movies back in the day, you know, guys would go out, hang out, whatever. You know, I had my boys, you know, at some point. You know, my wife Mariana would usually come on every road trip. She was a trooper, man. She'd come on every road trip, and so we'd be together a lot.
That's good. That's a good, really good message, I think, for kids to hear, that they gotta let that game go, because kids hold on to it and it hurts them the next day.
You know, the mind is like a muscle, man. It's an energy burner. And 162 every day, you burn that sucker. It's like a battery. It's just not going to work well, you know. And focus is everything in this game. So you got to recharge that battery.
Yeah. I wanted to talk. I don't think I've ever asked you this personally, like in a conversation. I mean, we've talked a little bit about when you played, or a lot of it, but obviously when you got to the Rockies, I think was when your career kind of took off, right? And you're obviously in some really, really good lineups. And this question's kind of twofold. Do you think Colorado really has that big an impact on offensive output, number one? And number two, give me the best takeaways from the guys that you got to play with in those years, Castilla, Walker, Galarraga, any of those guys, like any cool stories or takeaways that you got from learning about a lot of different hitters and that were really good at the same time.
Yeah, Colorado has a huge effect on the hitters in a positive way and a negative way. And that's, you know, I remember when Dan O'Dowd took over as a GM, he was hiring all these, they did the numbers, you know, the sabermetrics on what people would do if they came to Colorado and hit. And what he found out real quick is, yes, at home the numbers jump, but what happens is they go on a road, and, you know, that flat breaking ball that you see at home for 2 weeks, all of a sudden is falling off a table on a road. And by the time you get used to that big breaking ball and that sink and that changeup fading on the road, you're back home, and it's a vicious cycle. So if you watch numbers, when you go to Colorado, yeah, your numbers are going to jump at home, and they're going to plummet on the road. And it's, you know, when I took over as hitting coach, I tried to put because what they started trying to do is bring a curveball machine on the road so they get used to it quicker. I said, no, you got to have a curveball machine at home, because you don't see it for 2 weeks at home. So, but it's tough to get the guys to get off their routine and hit a breaking ball every day at home, because they're not seeing them, you know. So it's a thing they're going to have to deal with eventually if they really want to win on the road, and that's a frustrating place to play on the road. Hitters, I can tell you this, my favorite freaking guy was Vinny Castilla's the best fastball hitter I've ever seen. And I played ping pong with him, and I don't care how hard you hit the ball to him, it's coming back. He's one of those guys, and he's laughing the whole time. And you're smashing balls at him, and he's just some crazy hand-eye coordination. But the greatest story I got of Vinny Castilla is he's facing Billy Wagner, who throws 100, and Billy faces him in the bottom of the ninth one night, throws a fastball about 100, 99, threw it 99. Vinny hits it 5 rows deep in the Astrodome. And everybody comes up to Billy after the game, and they say, Billy, why in the world did you throw Vinny that? He's the notorious best fastball hitter in the league. And Billy says, listen, I throw 100 miles an hour. If I face him tomorrow night, I'm going to throw the same thing. That's what I do. He faced him the next night, threw 99. He hit it in the same spot.
That's awesome.
Don Baylor said, if you're going to get Vinny, you got to come with triple digits.
Right.
He's not getting it. But Vinny's the best fastball hitter, and just never in a bad mood. Great guy. And I think that's why he was able to just be on that fastball. Not so much with a breaking ball, but he could hit fastball. Now, Galarraga was the opposite.
Complete opposite, yeah.
Yeah. This is why we were such a tough team to pitch against, because you'd get one guy out one way, and the next guy would kill you.
Right.
Galarraga, I would look at his highlight reel after the games or after the seasons, and he would hammer breaking balls. Just hammer breaking ball. All his home runs were off breaking balls. In the league, they had beat him up by throwing him in. Baylor got him and opened him up, so the league couldn't see the hole anymore because he was so open. So they started throwing him that breaking ball again, and he played a tune off of it. it was amazing that they wouldn't pitch him in anymore just because he stood up there opened up, you know. So he was amazing that way. And then there was Walker, who was lefty, who could just hit. You know, I mean, forget it. He could just hit. And then there was me that was righty, and my thing was more like I could really hit with 2 strikes. So we were a tough team to pitch against, and all of them just had different traits that were amazing in one lineup.
It was super fun to watch, and I would have described it the same way you kind of did. Larry was a pure hitter. I don't think you give yourself enough credit for being a really, really capable hitter, and obviously I think your ability with 2 strikes speaks for itself, and that's something that you're aware of. But I mean, it's so cool to hear it kind of firsthand.
Yeah.